Do you ever wonder what it's like for an NHL player when a trade happens? How does it affect their family? Where do they live? Do they want to be here? How will they shift their entire life? Will they fit in with a new team? And many more crucial questions. We at Vagabond Hockey want to take a deeper look at what happens to a player when a trade happens. Let's first look at the trade from a player's perspective. Not all trades are created equally. If you're some big-time player who's on the move, you might get a heads up from the GM or your manager, but that seems to be a rarity. For most players, Capitals forward Justin Williams can sum the initial reaction. It's not panic, it's shock. That's exactly what players feel when they see their name trending on Twitter or feel their phone blow up from incoming calls and messages. Erik Goodbranson, former Panther who was traded to the Canucks in 2016, had an even more unique experience as he was in the middle of a safari trip in Africa when he was traded. Let's hear from Goodbranson himself about his unique moment. I was on a safari in Africa in the middle of nowhere, in the middle of Botswana on a riverboat cruise. There's no cell service there. I made a transfer through 3 countries, finally made it to my hotel in Zimbabwe, got some internet, and my phone just blew up. My girlfriend had taken care of talking to my agents and setting everything up. Imagine being away from your phone for a couple of days and then getting back to it to find out your life is completely changed. No wonder it's shocking. When you think about it, a player moving to a new city to play hockey doesn't seem like a big deal, but that perspective takes the human element out of it. We're creatures of habit who build deep relationships and don't like sudden change. But being traded is part of being a professional, as Max Domi expressed after being moved from sunny Arizona to snowy Montreal in 2018. It just turns your whole life upside down. You're just so used to you have your house, you have the same restaurants, whatever it is. All of a sudden, that's not your life anymore, and it's not like you can just go back. You're now in a whole new home. When I first got to Montreal, even though it was the off-season, it felt like I was on a road trip. And I was like, okay, this is your actual home, and I'm not going back to Arizona, so it was like a pretty foreign and unique feeling. But I really enjoyed it. Everyone takes it differently, but I like the new scenery. I like coming to a new group and kind of hitting the refresh button. Think about any time you had to move around as a kid. If you had to join a new school or class, you know that anxious feeling of wondering if you'll fit in and make new friends. Even as an adult, those basic human feelings don't go away. Joining a new team is like transferring schools and wondering if it'll work out. At least that's how Matt Zuccarello felt when he was traded from New York to Dallas in 2019. I was at the same team a long time and I was scared. Am I going to fit in? What will the guys be like? It was hard. I was almost crying, but I was trying to hold it in. There's also this imposter syndrome that comes with being traded. For so many years, you lived in one city, surrounded by your teammates, wearing a different jersey and representing a different city, and then all of a sudden you're plucked from your roots and dropped in a different city, and you have to wear their jersey and say nice things about that city. The whole vibe with a new team is one of imposter syndrome, of playing dress up. Justin Bourne said, when you're embedded with a franchise for a real measure of time, even just from the start of one summer into the season, it's easy to feel like you're one of the people who make up the team. The logo represents you. You've heard the orientation talks, done the preseason testing, and heard all the rules laid out. You've seen others come and go. The team logo becomes part of who you are as a hockey player. Then there's also the embarrassing perspective of getting traded mid-game. Matt Duchene, the Avalanche brass, pulled him mid-game after confirming a trade to the Senators. Duchene had to sneak off the ice when he learned about the trade to prevent any unfortunate injury from happening and to accept his life-changing news. But it's not just the player that's affected, his family is as well. When JT Miller was traded from New York to Tampa Bay, he had no time to deal with the logistics of things. He was expected to play shortly after for Tampa Bay, but he had his family and his whole life still in New York. So his wife had to take on the task of moving their lives. My wife did it all. She was 8 months pregnant at the time too, Miller said. She had to fly down immediately because if she waited, I don't think you can fly past a certain time. It was a nightmare. I was just renting a house so I didn't have to sell it, but we still had to unfurnish it. But everything out there, get it into storage, get it shipped through a company to Tampa. My wife did all of this. That's a headache on its own, but when you toss in the reality of your children needing to transfer schools and make new friends, the whole thing becomes a nightmare. Which former St. Louis player Bill Guerin lived through as he was traded for the third time. "You want to sell it to them," Guerin said. "You want them to be excited. For them, it was near San Francisco. We'll go see Alcatraz and Lombard Street. We'll go to Santa Cruz, not far from the beach." So they get excited. It's like a mini vacation for them. At the time, Guerin had 4 children between the ages of 4 and 9. Finding a place to stay in a whole other monster because you're not even sure how long you'll be with the new team. A big issue for a player is finding a new place to stay. Buying a home is a big decision, so often they look to rent or simply stay in a hotel, which can be costly and also reinforces that imposter syndrome. It becomes even more complicated when you're juggling a family while trying to fit into a new team. If a couple players get traded in on go, sometimes they'll shack up together somewhere for the time being, which is a big change as well. Lastly, a player who's recently traded won't know if he's part of the new team's future, so they won't feel comfortable enough to purchase a new home until they've been told they're here for a long term. So you can have players staying in apartments or hotels for the considerable future. Being traded isn't just as simple as shaking hands with the player and telling him good luck in his next venture. There are many moving parts to a deal. So let's look at the logistics of a trade. Only the league can finalize a deal, so the teams must notify the league about the trade and all the moving parts associated with it. The league then reviews not only the deal, but the finances of the team and player, and also the health of the player before giving the okay. The league will also confirm if any picks exchanged can be traded and review cap space too. Before the world knows about the trade, the teams involved will email the staff to ensure the sudden change didn't disrupt their team chemistry. Sometimes a PR team might even put together a PowerPoint presentation with graphics and code clippings about the newly acquired player in order to sell the player to the new team. This is done so the team morale stays high and everyone's on the same page. Another presentation might be put together to say thank you to the player being traded by the team. You might be wondering who cleans up after the player, what happens to their gear, their jerseys, who tells the new team about the player's skate size or sponsored equipment brands and things of that nature. Well, all that responsibility falls on the equipment staff, who not only ships the outgoing player's kit to the new team, but lets the new team's staff know what the player likes and dislikes, so the transition can go as smoothly as possible. The equipment staff is another key group to kick into high gear once the trade occurs. They'll pack the equipment for an outgoing player, make arrangements to have items shipped to the player at his home or new city, and start preparing the kit to be worn by the new player, including finding out the player's skate size, preferred or sponsored equipment brands, and their number of choice, and then sewing on a new name bar and number on home and away jerseys. On the other end, when you're the team receiving a new player, your staff is up and about booking travel arrangements, calling rental car agencies, securing immigration permits, and even looking up schools for the children of the new player. So it seems as if the teams really acknowledge how big of a change this is for the player, trying to make them as comfortable as possible. There are many articles in the NHL collective bargaining agreement that help out players when traded. For example, in Article 14, a player who's entitled to reimbursement can get them from his new club or his old club. Part of this includes reimbursement for rental and mortgage expenses, reasonable moving expenses, and hotel accommodations for 21 days, which includes a per diem and a rental car. This article also covers a few family expenses as well, such as transferred player's spouse and children's round-trip economy class air travel. So there are many benefits in the financial system of the NHL to help out the player, thanks to the CBA. So there you have it, an in-depth look from the player's perspective. Is there something we missed? What was something new that you learned? Let us know.